What if there were a medicine that could heal almost anything?
That would be great.
But they didn't want you to know about it.
Sorry, who's they?
Some people are following me, and I brought my tortoise.
From executive producers Mike Judge and Greg Daniels and co-creators Joe Bennett and Steve Healy comes an animated comedy thriller about what it takes to change the world. Common Side Effects. New episodes, Sundays at 11:30 p.m. on Adult Swim. Now streaming on Max.
There's all kinds of roadblocks in the way of changing how we relate to people with our boundaries. And it's going to be uncomfortable. That's part of the process.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 656 with guest Dr. Kaeni. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you're here. Happy February in this, what already feels like a very long year. We're only on the second month of it. And I wanted to, before we get into the show, I wanted to make a couple of exciting announcements, I think. One of them is that I'm turning 50 soon. I am coming around the corner fast. I have so much gratitude in my heart, love in my heart, excitement for what I'm going to bring you this year that I'm turning 50. One of those things is a 10-part podcast series. I'm doing it all on my own. I'm going to be reflecting on the last many, many years. More specifically, the years of personal development that I've been doing. And the last 2 years specifically have been incredibly accelerated in terms of my own growth. I haven't shared that much with you yet, partly because it's been fresh, partly because I need to be very intentional about how I do that. For those of you that don't know, I left my marriage 2 years ago, and it has been a bit of a wild ride, both just within that and my own personal growth. And I'm going to be creating 10 podcast episodes. They're going to be solo, kind of mini-sodes about 10 truly important lessons that I have learned, not just in the last 2 years, but I mean, they've kind of reached a fever pitch, if you will, but that have come to the forefront over these last couple of years, and just 10 huge lessons that I'm hoping that will be of service to you. And also, I am going to be facilitating Write Your Way Through It again. Speaking of personal growth, we're going to start at the end of February. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss it, make sure that you're on my email list and that those emails don't go to your spam filter. If you go to andreaowen.com/free, you can sign up easily there, and I will send out emails for Write Your Way Through It. Write Your Way Through It is a 6-week virtual course around writing. It does not mean that you have to be going through quote unquote it. You don't have to be going through something difficult. It's really for anyone who wants to have writing be a practice for them, to be able to gain self-awareness, to be able to integrate things that they have learned, to be able to really do the work. I want to read to you just a couple of things that people said who took this last April. Rachel said, "I knew I needed a change and a serious kick in the pants to make it happen, and this course was exactly what I needed. The biggest benefit for me was the incredible sense of community and the simple, easy to follow structure. It made showing up and doing the work feel doable. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded a couple more weeks of it." And Allison says, "The biggest benefit for me was the camaraderie with other like-minded women. It was safe, inspiring space to share ideas, writing, and insights while building a sense of community." Samantha says, "The accessible price point was the first thing that made me say yes to this course. It felt like something I could commit to both financially and personally. The biggest takeaway for me was realizing I don't have to journal for a set time or word goal. That was such a freeing and impactful shift in my mindset." So again, just go to AndreaOwen.com/free to sign up for my email list, and you will get those emails. We're going to start at the end of February, and I only teach this class once a year. It tends to be a smaller group, so you will have direct access to me. That's what I do in this program, is that you bring something specific that you are stuck on or that you've been trying to work through. I ask you specific questions about it, give you your own personalized, unique journaling prompts. And then we have a dashboard on my website that's password protected where you can see all of the journaling prompts from the entire class. And if you want to do those, you can do those or just focus on your own. All right, let me tell you about our wonderful guest today. Dr. Kat is a perinatal mental health certified psychologist, author of The Pregnancy Workbook, Manage Anxiety and Worry with CBT and Mindfulness Techniques, and host of the Mom and Mind podcast, the longest running perinatal mental health podcast since 2016. Dr. Kat began specializing in perinatal mental health after her own experience with postpartum depression, anxiety, and OCD over 14 years ago. Dr. Kat continues to offer psychotherapy virtually to clients across California. So without further ado, here is Dr. Kat. Kat, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
It's such a pleasure. And I want to preface this by saying that this podcast, although you work primarily with mothers, this podcast is, we're going to talk about all people. And the majority of my audience are people who identify as women. And so that's really where I would like, let me start there. Your work is wrapped up in mental health and having better mental health. And I have had, I don't know, probably 20 or more guests who specifically come on to talk about boundaries. So clearly I know that's an important topic. But in your work, you talk about how boundaries play a pretty large role in having good, healthy mental health. So can we start with like, how can people get better at not just starting boundaries, but sticking to them? Do you have like the 1, 2, 3s that you like to talk about?
Yeah. Boundaries are my favorite.
You need to put that on a t-shirt.
I do.
We'll be like, boo.
I have so many t-shirt ideas. I just need to actually do it. Yeah. I mean, boundaries are so important. I think the first thing for me, and the thing I talk with people most about, is sometimes you're not even in tune with yourself and what your boundaries are. Mm-hmm. So that is the first part for sure. And to even know what that is kind of needing to be a little bit introspective, sometimes even paying attention to physical cues. You know, if like somebody's asking you to do something and you get like that feeling or a bristle or I really don't want to say yes, but I feel it. That kind of stuff, you can feel it in your body. You can feel it emotionally. So there's usually some clue, something that's telling you this is not for me. And then, hey, because we've all been socialized to push way past that and do the thing anyways. Sometimes that's the second part. You have to check in with yourself about like, why am I going to say yes? Or why do I want to say no? If you've been socialized out of even knowing that you have a thought or a feeling or a preference, then understanding for yourself your why of your yes or your no can, even if you still do the thing you don't want to do, at least you're building capacity for understanding you and your process. You know, depending on the relationship with the person you have who you're setting boundaries with, sometimes you can just be open about your process to let them know, hey, I'm practicing learning what my limits are, what my preferences are. I'm going to fumble around a little bit with that. So if I tell you yes or no for something and I don't have, reasoning why, or I don't understand myself why, I just need a little flexibility as I'm starting this process. Mm-hmm. In other cases, if you're used to saying yes and you're starting to say no, you yourself are having to build some tolerance around that distress. Okay, this is going to be really uncomfortable for me. I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to go into a shame spiral or a guilt spiral
and regret it.
Feel terrible and regret it. Yeah, and we'll deal with that after. Take that to therapy or wherever you go with it. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of roadblocks in the way of changing how we relate to people with our boundaries, and it's going to be uncomfortable. That's part of the process.
It's one of the most uncomfortable things. And I had a guest on, Heather Chauvin was on my show, and we were talking about conflict and uncomfortable conversations. And I said something that I don't know if I've ever articulated it on the show. And I said, it's not that you don't like having hard conversations or what might some deem as conflict. You don't like the emotional discomfort around it. And the same is said for boundaries. Like, it's not that we hate setting boundaries. Sometimes we don't know how, sure. We don't have the skill or the script to do it, but it's the emotional discomfort and the fear of being rejected, abandoned, someone's mad at us, they're disappointed, like all of those emotions that we're really, really uncomfortable experiencing. Also, I want to point back to something that you said that I think is so important. And I don't know if I mentioned it enough, about how you said you might watch yourself like doing the old behavior that you want to change, but but the good news is that you noticed it this time, like,
Right.
and you feel the discomfort of it. Like, that's progress. That's part of the journey.
For sure it is. Yeah, for sure. Just to be able to have that moment with yourself where you're like, oh, okay. And you can build on that. And you'll know that later. Even if you do it the same thing 10 more times, you're in a process. And that's pretty cool.
Yes. The way I describe it to people is, it's not about, okay, you hear about this new skill on a podcast or you read about it in a book, and then you're like, I'm going to put this into practice. And then the next time you are presented with the opportunity to do that, that you do it. Right. And like, I'm like, no, that's not how it works. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to learn that this new skill, or that you need to set boundaries. And then you're going to see an opportunity, a missed opportunity, probably in real time. You're going to watch yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's going to feel uncomfortable. And then the next time, and then you might do that several times until you muster up the courage to actually like change the behavior. And it's going to be messy and wonky. And I think that's so important to talk about, because I think it's the missed, like, in between messy middle that just, it's not that glamorous. Like,
oh, for sure. And it's hard to know that that's going to be there, because if you're watching other people setting boundaries, you're like, how did they get there? How did they get to that point? You're not necessarily privy to what's happening internally for them, that they're tripping over themselves, that they're saying the thing that they didn't want to say, or it came out funky or whatever. That's an internal process. So the more we talk about that, this is messy. It's not going to go perfectly every time, and it doesn't need to. You have more permission to just do the thing.
Yeah. I'll give a really quick example. I'm dating someone new, and we're about 3.5 months in as you and I are recording this. And even just earlier today, like, I got triggered about something, and then I was weird about it. And then I immediately said, oh, you know what just happened? I just got triggered, and I realized that I'm like looking for evidence that this is going to fall apart because I like you so much, and that I'm hyper vigilant for evidence of, like, and pointing to it, and like, there it is. There's the thing, right? That he's going to either do that's going to be the end of us, or that I'm going to react to that he's not going to like. That's going to be the end. Like, I'm trying to recreate patterns, and so what I'm doing now is I'm just like pointing it out in real time, and he is like. So excited. He's like, oh my God, like, thank you for that. Like, now we don't we don't have to go down the path of you bottling it up and then resenting me and then us fighting about it later. And I'm like, yeah, that's growth, I think. So that's what it looks like. It's messy. It's still uncomfortable. So uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think a little healthier. Okay. I want to shift gears and ask you about your journey around becoming a mental health advocate. Like, what inspired you to create? You have a podcast called Mom and Mind, which I have been a guest on. And so where did this all start?
It started with my own journey. I was already a psychologist working in a major medical system, and, doing the whole, like, I got married and want to have a kid thing. And my daughter was a wanted and planned and tried for pregnancy, became pregnant. Everything was pretty okay. I mean, there's some normal pregnancy bumps along the road. But towards the end of my pregnancy, I started looking back on it. I'll say that first. Looking back on it, I know that towards the end of my pregnancy, my anxiety started. And that took the form of kind of, even in my registry for her, it was like everything had to be organic and non-toxic. Nothing bad could touch her, and I was like, fine, if you want those things, cool. but I was kind of super vigilant about it.
Mm-hmm.
That just as an indicator, that was mine. But after she was born, there was a tiny little thing that happened after her birth where she was like spitting up some stuff that, was weird. And that was enough really for me at that point to start my process. And the incredible shift and change of like, oh my gosh, I'm now responsible for this whole human, not by myself, but in a lot of ways, my plan was to nurse and that was ended up being very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of things that happened along the way. She was colicky and had spit up, difficulty sleeping, the whole nine there. She's healthy, but it was difficult. But since I didn't really know what was going on at the time, it was just like, okay, this must be what it's supposed to be like, I guess. Okay. And the anxiety just started ramping up to the point that it started to make me feel very depressed. It was just such an intense, I had intrusive thoughts all the time. I was worried that something bad was going to happen to her all of the time. That went on for a year. So me as a psychologist, for a couple of things, this is all, hindsight. I didn't want to know that something was quote unquote wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a therapist. I should know how to deal with X,
Yeah,
Y,
that
Z,
extra layer of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous. That was one of the pressures. And I had depression and anxiety in my past, and I didn't want to experience that again. I had it a couple of times. And so there were all of these things where I was trying to just tell myself I was fine, everything was going to be okay. But the more I denied what was actually going on, the worse I got.
Yes.
And man, I was really good at pretending like things were fine.
Mm-hmm.
Very,
that works for
very
a little
good.
while.
It works for a little while. And hey, thanks, childhood trauma. I already had training in pretending like things were fine. So some of my own childhood trauma came up during this time too. And I wasn't telling anybody about it until I did go back to my therapist and I said, something's not right. I think I'm depressed. And they said, you're not depressed. And I just immediately went back into a hole. I was like, okay, then something's just wrong with me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was rough. So after about a year, I just kind of sat down with myself literally and gave myself the PHQ-9 depression screening tool that I give to everybody. And I said, you have to answer this accurately. You have to answer this with all of your truth. And I did. And lo and behold, my depression was in a moderate severe range. So that's when I kind of came to terms with it. And, I started doing some reading and trying to understand like, oh, okay, this is postpartum anxiety. This is postpartum depression. And oh gosh, hey, it's postpartum OCD too, which I didn't even know was a thing because I didn't have any training in this. It wasn't discussed in grad school or residency or anywhere. There were a couple of things working against me there to even understand what was going on. And one of them was just a basic knowledge that I should have been given at some point.
Right.
That's the plight of a lot of people, unfortunately, who go through this is you kind of find out because you bottom out or it's so bad that it becomes debilitating. And then you find out the hard way.
Oh man. And what year was this?
2010.
Okay. So we were having babies around the same time. I had my first in 2007 and my second in 2009. And I talked about this on your show. After my first one was where I experienced the most severe postpartum mental health struggles. With my second one, I don't remember hardly anything. I don't understand what the difference was. It's interesting. And I had a toddler at the same time that I had this newborn, but the first time it was severe. And I distinctly remember there being signs in the various places, I think at the hospital where I gave birth, about domestic violence and things like, the signs that ask questions. Are you unsure of where you're going to get your next meal, paying bills, heat on, things like that? And you could like write on a piece of paper your name and number, and then somebody would contact you. It was very private like that. And I vividly remember that, but I don't ever remember ever being asked or given a questionnaire about my own mental health especially like after in the late stages of pregnancy or after.
Right.
So I don't know if that's changed now that we're in 2020, almost 2025.
Yes, but to your
Okay.
point, it wasn't like that for a long time. Nobody was being asked.
And that wasn't that long ago. It's not like we're talking about the 1970s when I was born.
No, it wasn't that long ago. But yet, yes, things have shifted and changed. A lot of doctors' offices, the hospital systems are putting screening tools in place. There's still some way to go with how that's implemented and what's done with that information after people fill out those forms, what do physicians or what offices actually do. I was given that screen. It was in the hospital system I was in. I was a part of just pediatric follow-up. So the pediatrician's office gave it to me and I lied.
Did you? Okay. I can understand why.
Yeah.
Like, I probably would have too, to be honest, because I'd be afraid that somebody's going to take my baby away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's all kinds of reasons why people aren't totally truthful on those, but that's one of them. Just what are people going to think? What are they going to do? What's going to happen? We can do better.
Okay. We take a quick ad break. When we get back, I want to stay on the subject and talk to you specifically around shame and self-compassion. So we'll be right back. Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you'll feel the benefits in literally every aspect of your life? I found a valuable tool that's been a game changer for me. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's this sleek little device that measures your metabolism through your breath. On the app, Lumen shows you whether you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. Here's how it works. First thing in the morning, you breathe into your Lumen. It tells you what's happening with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs, and gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day. And it doesn't stop there. You can check in with Lumen before and after meals or workouts so you know exactly how your body is responding in real time. It's like having a metabolism whisperer in your pocket. And here's why this matters. Your metabolism is like the engine of your body. When it's running smoothly, everything improves. Plus, Lumen even tracks hormonal shifts like your cycle or menopause, adjusting its recommendations to keep you fueled and feeling great. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/noise to get 20% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/noise for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough airtime: perimenopause and menopause. Hot flashes, sleepless nights, mood swings, brain fog, body changes. You're not imagining it. It's real and it's frustrating. But here's the good news. You don't have to live like this. Meet MIDI Health, specialized care just for women navigating this stage of life. With MIDI, booking a virtual visit is simple. You'll meet with a compassionate clinician who gets it. They'll listen to your symptoms, answer your questions, and create a personalized care plan just for you. MIDI Health treats hot flashes, night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness, and libido changes, weight and body changes, brain fog, memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety, and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk, and more. MIDI's recommendations can have a huge impact on your well-being. And guess what? Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers. No memberships, no hidden fees. If insurance isn't an option, their affordable cash prices keep care within reach. You deserve to feel amazing. Don't wait. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI Health, specialized care for your next chapter. I want to talk to you all about something I've struggled with in the past, and that's my relationship with food and my body. I struggled with anorexia for years in my 20s, and finding good treatment and reaching recovery was complicated for several reasons. One being that treatment wasn't covered by insurance simply because I still got my period. It was frustrating to have to handle it all on my own. Eating disorders are so common, but really aren't talked about enough. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps you recover at home so you don't have to press pause on work, family, or other important parts of your life to heal your relationship with food. Equip provides you with a dedicated care team that can include a therapist, a dietitian, medical provider, and a mentor who has been through recovery. Equip treats patients of all ages with all types of eating disorders, is covered by insurance, and has no wait list. If you're struggling with your relationship with food and your body, or know someone who is, don't wait to get a free consultation with Equip. Visit equip.health/noise to learn more about Equip's virtual accessible eating disorder treatment. That's equip, EQUIP.health/noise. Okay, can you approach the topic, or how do you approach the topic? I think is a better question around shame and self-compassion in your clients. Because I'm assuming if you're working with their mental health, like those are two topics that come up a lot.
No doubt. Shame is big, big, big. It is really prevalent. I haven't come across somebody who's come into therapy who hasn't been dealing with shame on some level.
Yeah. I want to stop you first and ask you, do they know that that's what it is when they come in, or do you as the counselor gently point it out?
Right. No, not always.
Yeah. Okay. I find the same experience when I'm working with clients.
It's just kind of there in part because it's in the water as women in some way to just feel bad about something. There's just kind of shame within culture about anything, related to women. I mean, now we're
not measuring up.
Right. Yeah. We're moving into more of an empowering time, I think, but when you have this, like the myths of motherhood, so to speak, where you're supposed to be happy and joyful and grateful, and this is what your body's meant to do, and this is why you're here on this planet, and like this insane amount of pressure. And okay, so that's just what you've been told to some extent, maybe not directly, but again, it's just messaging that we get from early on in life. If that's what you're walking into motherhood with, and then you don't feel joyful, you don't feel particularly grateful, you're not happy to be doing this, or you love this little being, but you feel horrible and you're not supposed to, then the only outcome from that is shame. You're going to feel bad about yourself. You're going to feel like you're not measuring up, you're not good enough, you're not doing a good job. It's not always easy to identify as, I feel I'm having this, feeling of shame that society has put on. Like, we're not thinking in those terms. It just, we feel bad and we think we're bad. Yeah, that's how those feelings are interpreted. I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad person. I'm not good enough.
I'm a failure.
That's a big one.
I thank you for pointing that out, because I think that a lot of people, shame is insidious. And
that's the word I wanted. Thank you. Yes.
I had a feeling I didn't want to finish your sentence. I didn't want to be rude, but I'm like, I think that's the word she's thinking of or trying to think of. And it's insidious and it likes to hide, and that's how it stays alive. Yes. And what I like to gently point people towards is when you are feeling like a failure, when you are experiencing criticism, whether it's from yourself in your own head or if it's from other people. I know sometimes like mothers-in-law can be that way, or partners, or other moms, or commercials that we see on YouTube, or whatever it is. Like the criticism can come from really anywhere, or we're feeling judged, that shame is either present or lurking right around the corner.
Right.
I say that and with emphasis because what I have encountered, I've been certified in Brene Brown's methodology for more than 10 years now. And what I hear a decent amount is women say, well, I don't walk around feeling ashamed. Like, do I need this work? And I always say, like, do you struggle with poor boundaries or sometimes perfectionism, numbing out, overachieving, chronic controlling, isolating? And they're like looking at me like, why are you writing my memoir? And I'm like, if you engage in any of those, and by the way, me too, that you're doing so in an effort to try to avoid shame, and therefore shame is driving the bus.
Right.
So the remedy is to talk about it, to have conversations like this. And, there's a whole methodology, which I won't get into, but let's shift gears and talk about self-compassion. So what is it that is that like a big point of healing work that you do with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Obviously with shame, you're also dealing with some either self-hatred or self-loathing or feeling negatively about yourself in some way, also depression and anxiety in the mix or whatever else. That in and of itself is going to make your thought process more negative, more self-judgmental, more myopic. You're going to see a smaller swath of yourself, of the world, of all of that. And it becomes really hard to see the bigger picture that, okay, yeah, like we were mentioning before, there are all these systems that are outside of just you that have been impacting you in some way to come to this very moment. So part of the self-compassion process, like learning or implementing that, is to widen perspective a little bit. So I do a lot of bringing context in to help people understand that, okay, there are other things at play here that are contributing to how you feel, your behavioral changes or whatever is going
Hormones,
on for them.
maybe.
Yeah, because people need to be able to see some other points, some other evidence of what's going on, what's contributing to this, to help broaden perspective a little bit. The most impactful kind of intervention strategy, however you want to put it, is for them to think about somebody that they love and care about. If that person, that friend, let's say, was going through the exact same thing, what would they say to them?
Yeah.
Would they say you're a failure? Would they say you should really do a better job? Somebody else,
you need to get your shit together.
You need to get your shit together. Yeah. No, you maybe, unless you're that kind of person, you would, but no, you're not saying that to other people. If you have deep care and compassion and love and you have perspective, you're being loving, you're being gentle, you're being kind, you're being supportive, you're, helping them to see them in their fullest light. So if why is it that they deserve that and you don't?
Yeah.
Well, and then we dig into some other stuff about why they feel like they don't deserve it. But it is about broadening perspective, context, and giving an example in such a way that you can't refute it. I wouldn't say that to them because they deserve better than that. So maybe I do too.
Yes. And this, I hope that people listening to this who are child free understand, like, we're talking to everybody here, this isn't just for mothers. I think it's a unique position to be in, especially when you're a new mother, to feel some guilt and shame and as the journey goes on, but it's universal to all humans really. But I think the experience of someone who identifies as a girl and then a woman is interesting in that regard. And like you were saying, like feeling like we don't measure up, and it's tricky. But I think also I just want to point out that this is a lifelong journey. I can tell you that what the quote unquote other side looks like is being able to access that self-compassion at a much easier and faster rate than you ever had before. It's a muscle that you flex. You have to put in the reps and sets. It's uncomfortable in the beginning. And people say like, this is so weird to like speak to myself kindly. And I say, it is like learning a new language. Like you are literally changing the neural pathways in your brain. That is what's happening. You're creating new ones. And it is so similar to learning a new language. As anyone who's taken many, many Espanol classes knows that like, if you don't continuously practice it, you're not going to be able to ask for where the bathroom is when you're at the Mexican restaurant. So you have to practice. And that's what I have done diligently over the last, since about 2007. And it works. And sometimes I fall backwards and beat myself up, and you just keep getting back up and practicing.
Absolutely. And there's every time you're sort of like on a growth edge, or you're in a new situation in life, or it's some kind of transition, new job, new relationship, new whatever, that stuff comes up to be re-examined, really. Like, okay, we figured it out in these contexts over here. Now this one is a little different. Let's try it here. And that's normal. I like to let people know that is coming, that is part of the process, because I think we have oversimplified healing in a way like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be on some mountaintop and that's where I stay forever. That's not how humans work. We have new challenges that come up and new circumstances that we have to adjust and figure out how to be in those new ways. So yeah, some of your old stuff is going to pop up, and that's okay.
That's normal. Yeah. Buckle up. Okay. All right. For people who, for everyone, what are some like lessons or practices from your work that anyone can apply to improving their overall mental well-being that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, one of my favorites is if you can get into a practice of when you wake up in the morning at whatever point, as close as to when you wake up is what I mean, is to ask yourself, what do I need today? As your first kind of processing moment of the day, because it is so easy to wake up and then the list of the day is just there of, okay, groceries.
You even hit the ground.
Oh yeah, work. I've got this project, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you're going to be left off the list if you don't put yourself on it. So if the first question can be about you and what your needs are today, even if you can't fully attend to it, checking in with yourself is part of knowing what you need, is part of taking care of yourself and putting yourself on the list. So maybe you only have a minute to do your deep breathing or just staring at a wall or whatever it is that you need to do to disconnect. Fine. That's fine. And that's like those little moments of the next couple of things I like to do are finding the small moments. I mean, again, we have this pressure like, okay, you can't meditate for an hour. Okay. A lot of people can't because of our busy lives. You take a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you have to sit and breathe. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be just noticing your breath. You can be checking in with yourself at that moment. Was I able to attend to what I needed today? Can I make time in my day to go on a 10-minute walk to make sure I drink 4 glasses of water today? It doesn't need to be super complex. If we're attending to our foundational needs like rest and water and food and, those sleep. Yeah. Those kinds of things really set people up, and it can feel too simplistic sometimes to be there or be starting there. If you're starting somewhere, it really incrementally makes a big difference in how you feel and your clarity of mind, and your capacity, your bandwidth for the day, to just make sure you have some of your foundational needs in place.
Okay. I love that. We need to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to ask you about the mental load. So we'll be right back.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
The new year is the perfect time to start fresh. So why not make it delicious? Start your day with Bob's Red Mill 100% whole grain oats. One simple ingredient with endless possibilities. Whether you're a sweetness savorer or a good health guru, with Bob's Red Mill, you can have a naturally delicious breakfast made your way. So savor your mornings with premium oats, perfected by nature and made to be shared. No matter how you top your oats, you're always welcome at our table. Look for Bob's Red Mill oats in the blue bag.
Okay. This is a question that is for, will serve all women. We hear, and I've had people on the podcast come and talk about things like invisible labor or the mental load of just women in general. So how can our listeners better understand maybe the impact that that's having and the importance of having the conversation with either coworkers or partners or our older children or whoever it is in our life in order to try to mend that problem?
The mental load is often more for women in general, again, because of, socialization and things like that. We tend to be caregivers, or at least more likely to be put in caregiving positions, And when you're a caregiver, inherently in that is learning to notice small things, like that things that other people need, things that need to be attended to. If you're partnered with somebody who maybe doesn't either have that socialization or that's just not where their bandwidth is, it's really easy to just be like, oh, it's easier for me to just do it.
Yeah, it
talk
is.
to them
It's
about
less
it.
effort.
Oh, it for sure is, until it's not. I mean, you can take on everything and then burn yourself right out. Right. Sometimes we don't even know we're doing the thing. So that's part of it, is to like kind of taking inventory. It can be a little bit painful to sit and write down what you're doing, make a list. And some of it's, it's so automatic. You don't even know that you're doing, like creating a grocery list in your head. So you're like walking around the kitchen or something. And it's not that you shouldn't do that or can't do that, but being aware of how much you do it and how much you take on that other people could be doing, is just that awareness building is so important, because you can't change anything unless you know kind of what's going on. One thing I would caution against is it's really easy to, there's a lot of like scorekeeping in mental load, which again is understandable, but it can turn into like, I do all of these things, the resentment about it, and you don't do X, Y, or Z. And we can start not recognizing what other people are doing. So that's just like a little asterisk there. But for the most part, I can generalize that women tend to do more. So if you do want to sit down and like write out your list of the things you think about, the things that you actually do in the day, a minute detail as possible, so that you can get a big picture of what you're holding. Then you can start to decide what you don't want to hold anymore, or what you can't hold anymore. That can become a conversation with a partner, or, as you say, coworker or whoever. Like, yeah, I actually don't have the capacity to do X right now, even though I really want to, and it's hard for me not to. What can we work out so that we can balance the load a little bit? But it really does first begin with building the awareness and giving yourself options. That's what's most important. We really feel like we have to be doing all of these things, and you just don't. It's just a habit. It's a habit, and it's maybe a pressure, and there's probably some childhood stuff in there somewhere.
Social conditioning. Yeah. And I think what tends to happen is that women whether it's personal life or professional life, let it build up and build up and build resentments. And then those resentments end up sort of like leaking out into passive aggressiveness, sarcasm, a little bit of manipulation. What I mean by that is letting something fall apart on purpose, to see what happens, like kind of game playing. And I say all this, from experience. And also like I coach a decent amount of women in leadership positions in corporate environments. And this happens a lot on teams where the women tend to be the ones who just automatically take on more responsibility and are just looked at to be the ones who organize or take notes or like, do all the little extra stuff and even like the party planning committee and things like that. Right. But my cautionary tale here in saying all of that is around, you don't have to let it build up and build up until there's an explosion or huge resentments or it becomes just this major thorn or elephant in the room. Have you seen the documentary Fair Play?
I have the book and I'm reading it right now.
Okay. It's a book that goes with a deck that's like and it's not a card game, but it's like especially for people in partnerships. And there's a documentary too. And so I often ask people like, just go watch even just the trailer to the documentary with your partner. And maybe that'll open up the conversation, because it can be a kind conversation. It doesn't have to be a fight and an argument and resentments.
Yeah, totally. And we're all, if again, I'll overgeneralize. If you have sort of like stereotypical male partner, they might not even be aware that it's happening. And that's their conditioning.
Sure. That is, absolutely. That's their conditioning. And it's hard not to point fingers and blame, but like I always had to come at it with a lot of like curiosity and lean on my coaching skills, which was not easy. I have appreciated this conversation so much. Is there anything, before we close, is there anything you want to circle back to expand on, or any new nugget that you want to give us before we close in order for you to feel complete?
Yeah, I just want to give people, not that I need to give people permission, but sometimes I think people need permission, and women in particular need permission to put themselves on the list and make sure that, you know, your needs are attended to. It's okay to have needs. It's okay to take up space. It's okay to, you know, set boundaries. As we've said, the more you practice, the easier it will become. And there's, in my opinion, no better journey than the healing journey. That's what I wish for everybody, to just have a little bit more freedom within themselves, have a little bit more peace within themselves after working through some of this stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Hear, hear. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
My website, wellmindperinatal.com, houses just about everything. My podcast, but you can find the podcast on any podcast platform, Mom and Mind. My courses are there. You can find me on Instagram is where I'm most active, and at Mom and Mind. Basically everything at Mom and Mind, on YouTube as well.
All those links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Kat. And everyone listening, thank you for being with us. I'm so grateful for your time. You know how incredibly grateful I am for that. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans, and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes. AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free, and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.